Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome into this new video here on the channel, which is one some of you have been waiting for me to finally decide what is going to be our next save on the channel. And we've had the WWE 2021 save going for several months now, and as I mentioned previously, we have been thinking about some ideas for starting another one. Probably will be a little bit more casual, I would think. It's not going to be as probably, I don't want to say as extensive, but there will probably still be more of the WWE 2021 episodes each week than you'll get of these. But in a new game, there's always, some exciting stuff to look at, some possibilities and all of that. And so wanted to kind of narrow it down now to two that I have in mind, which you guys have given me a lot of great suggestions. But looking around at some of the mods, I think that was very important too, was to actually find mods that I felt like were probably going to produce a pretty fun game long term, even if it is something where we only do this particular save like once a week or something. I wanted to make sure we had some that could, play out pretty well and not, get halfway into it and all of a sudden everything, the whole game world is just a mess and there's really nothing we can do about it. So here are the two that I've kind of come to a conclusion on, and I will let you guys weigh in, give me some feedback, and I'll let you know which one that I'm sort of leaning towards. But this one is going to be a 1998 mod, which this is one of the ones, and I'll put the link to the mods too for any of you guys. Some of you will know these. You've probably played these, but if you haven't, I'll put the link to them in the comments so you can check those out if you want. But with 1998, this was one of the ones we put in like the possibilities in that big list I made on whichever video that was that you guys responded to. I think that 98 is very interesting to me because when you look around at it, like, you've got an interesting game world. There's a lot of different companies potentially we could look at in 98. Probably, for me, I'm going to narrow it down to three. It'll either be ECW, which I think is an interesting thought in and of itself because it is kind of it's different because it's a smaller company. We know, like, it would be a different save than doing the big mega WWE save we're doing now with, hundreds of workers to manage and all this other stuff. Smaller, more intimate type roster. We'd have a bit more of an uphill climb given the financial situation. There would be more challenges if we did something like ECW in 98. You can see sort of the main people here, and I mean, as we know, it's just, I think there would be some big challenges if we decided to do 1998 and if we did ECW. Meanwhile, there's WCW, which I find very appealing. Personally, I don't find this very appealing. I will say that right off the bat. If we're looking for, positives, negatives, I don't find the appeal of booking three different shows each week. So if we decided WCW, which, again, I will say is probably one of the front runners for me right now, just based on the roster and kind of changing history and saying, all right, what happens if WCW doesn't go anywhere? What if it becomes, kind of the top promotion in the world and stays that way? Are there WWF stars that come over to WCW? All those possibilities I find interesting. But again, I would probably, if we go this route, we will not be doing 3 TV shows a week. I'm just telling you. I would probably maneuver that around much differently because I want this save to kind of be a little bit different than what we're doing with the WWE one. So that is something to keep in mind too. But again, there's a lot of appeal when you look at the roster here. Having all these guys, Hogan, Flair, Sting, Savage, Brett, Goldberg, on down the line here. I mean, we see it. Nash, the Giant, Luger, Piper, DDP. Like, there's so many people to work with on this roster. And, there's obviously a very, very good cruiserweight division already in place, with everyone that's there. Like, we know Ray's there. We know Hoovy and so forth. Like, they're all there. And so I think that's another aspect that I would find pretty fun, is to have that cruiserweight division as something to work with. We've got Kidman and all these other up-and-coming stars at this point in 98. So that is an interesting one for me. Of course, I think the big thing with WCW in 98 is going to be their backstage situation. I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out because, it's just one of those things where there's a lot of bad influences backstage at this era, and when we go through the game, I'm sure that's going to play a part. We look at the relationships of WCW. It's kind of, we know what it's going to be. Like the WWF, that's the main war here between these two. So I do find, WCW 98 is an interesting one. And then, of course, there is the WWF, which I think we would probably change the logo up here. And it may be changed. This is, I think, just sort of I don't think the official 98. I think that one's going to be released. And again, I'll put the link to it. I think it's actually going to be released the day after I'm recording this. So we'll have probably a little bit more updated stuff like this. But if we went the WWF route, we know where things stand in 98. You've got Taker, Shawn, Austin, Rock, Kane, all of that in January. We know how big of a year that was when you look at kind of the guys who were bursting into that main event scene and everything with Triple H and all those guys. So that's another one that certainly I would find very interesting to play. I do like the idea of just having one main show each week. And, again, you're not going to go wrong having a lot to work with just the talent that's on this roster. In WWF at the time, it's actually not as big of a roster, I guess, as WCW. It's still pretty big. But there's a lot of, interesting directions you can go in with WWF. I don't necessarily find that one as appealing, just to be honest, as I do WCW. Or quite frankly, maybe even ECW, just because we're already doing a WWE save, and I don't mind a little bit of a different scenario there, just based on, I think it's going to be something that we want to sort of, all right, of what if? Like, what if this was the case? What if that? There's probably so many what ifs you could do with WWF in 1998, just because, it did ultimately play out in their favor. So those are probably the big three when we look at 1998. If we went that route with that particular save, I just started, a sample game here just to kind of give you a look and feel of things. And I think I actually started with WCW, so we can look at that real quick if we want to. So, so if you see here, I mean, these are kind of where things stand. You've got, looking at WCW and the different aspects here, we've got Buff as our number one prospect on there. And then, you kind of look down and you see just the roster of what you're working with. We see here all these people that are legends, and just, a lot of different people to work with here. I think the Brett thing is fascinating to me in 98 because this is going to be a January start. It's coming right off Starrcade 97. We know how Brett was managed then, and I think it'd be kind of fun to see what, we could do with Brett in this scenario, and Sting, kind of his title run, what that would look like. He is the champion. And Goldberg's got all this momentum, and so that's kind of where things stand with WCW at that point. Cruiserweight champions: Ultimo Dragon, DDP, Sting, Steiners, and then Booker T is the TV champion. So I think that's an interesting one. But again, I'm open to your opinions on this. Now that's 1998, and I think again the game world very interesting at this point in 98. When we kind of look at what things are looking at. I clicked on the wrong one there. So this is kind of the state of where things are, just worldwide. New Japan is actually bigger, CMLL is bigger and such, but this is kind of the state of the game world in 98 using this save. Now, let's look at what I think would be my other choice, potentially, with this whole choosing between one or the other, 98 or... The other option would be, you see the date here, it's January week 1, 2011. However, this is not the Summer of Punk mod. This is not just a random point in time. This is the War of Immortals mod, which if you've been playing TEW for a long time, the War of Immortals mod it's always been one of my favorites because it is like the ultimate fantasy booking. Like it's, if you want to book Andre the Giant against Rey Mysterio, you can do that. If you want to book, Randy Savage versus whoever, Ricky Starks, Adam Cole, you have that opportunity. And so I think that it's always been a fun one because of that. It is very, extensive in terms of you've got a lot of companies, you got a lot of sort of similarities there, and you've got Caitlyn on the cover of Iron Man, which is something. All right, let's look at the companies here for this because there is a lot to choose from. For those of you who have played this mod, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So there is really no shortage of options when it comes to the War of the Immortals mod. AEW's in here. and we look at kind of the company, and Jericho, Moxley, Dustin, Cody, Omega's there, and this is where, because there are so many different companies, like it makes it kind of exciting for me, because I'm like, wow, there's a lot to choose from, but we could have quite a mixture of this. And by the way, just to quickly explain, if you haven't played this mod in particular, it is basically the thought that literally everyone in the history of wrestling in all these companies are there. So they're all there. They're all basically, in their prime, I guess you could say, in a sense. And so that's kind of the setup, is that you've got all these people, and you'll see as we go through this exactly what I'm talking about. But so you've got AEW here, but you've also got ECW. You've got, looking at sort of the state of ECW, RVD, Taz, Sabu, Shane Douglas, Sandman, they're all there for ECW. You go on down. That's where things, I think, really start to get interesting when you look at it. Impact. So Impact's roster is more of the, I guess some of the Impact regulars there for a while, some of the current Impact people that you've got there in that scenario. So you look here, you got Abyss, Ethan Carter, Rich Swann, and so forth. They're all there. And then you keep going along, and there are so many other options here. And then we got this one, which is the National Wrestling Alliance. So the NWA has Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Dusty Rhodes, Arn Anderson, Harley Race, and so forth. Tully, Magnum, all those guys. We keep going down. There's a New Blood Rising, which is from WCW. So that's where you've got Palumbo, O'Hare, all these people. Jimmy Yang is there. And we keep going. There's an NXT. Okay, here's your NXT guys, where you've got Finn Balor, Ciampa, Enzo and Cass. You've got Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is, the old school developmental, where it's Boogeyman and all these people. My point is, this is clearly showing that, this is sort of that traditional era of all these companies. They're all thrown into the same world, and how do they, kind of exist together, where you've got Bryan Danielson, a very young Bryan Danielson here, the Young Bucks, Paul London, Colt Cabana, that's Ring of Honor. You keep going along, and we see here, this is where things are going to start to get interesting. Total Nonstop Action, this is quite a roster. This is your TNA legends here, where you've got Kurt Angle in this, Jeff Jarrett, AJ, Samoa Joe, Rude. They're all there. Then you've got the WCW New World Order roster, which is, the prime time for WCW when the NWO is going on. So we see all these guys here. That's very appealing, right? When you look at that roster. Of course, you've got a pretty, interesting roster with a more traditional old school WCW, which I guess that would have been the early 90s and such, sort of that era of WCW, where Luger, Rude, Legion of Doom's there, Koloff, it's just incredible. And so I think, if you're a big world-class fan, you've got Bruiser Brody and the Von Erichs, you've got the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. So before the WWF comes along, Bruno, Andre, Sheik, Graham, you've just got an incredible assortment of talent to choose from here. The WWE roster, this is sort of that, I guess that sort of, mid-2000s, kind of in that range, WWE type roster, where you've got your Cena, Orton, Lesnar, Punk, Batista, those guys. You've got the WWE Universe, which is more of the current, recent, I think, kind of stalwarts leading the way there. Reigns, Rollins, Ambrose, Rousey, Owens, they're all there. The Attitude, which we kind of just looked at in 98. Your crew of Austin, Rock, Taker, Mankind, Triple H. The classic WWF, which I'm not going to lie, holds a very special place for me. Savage, Piper, Warrior, Perfect, Jake. That's a pretty interesting crew. I like that group there. And then you've got the New Generation, which is another one that I find very interesting, which is Brett, Shawn, Sid, Bulldog, Owen, those guys. So I don't remember who exactly I picked when I started this here, but it's interesting. I'll go back to the Caitlyn cover, leave it on there. We see that Paige is dating Alberto Del Rio, so that's an interesting narrative added to the game there. But I think I actually picked, I picked the New Generation. The WWF is sort of the sample game here. So, you can see that it's, the thing about this game is I don't necessarily know how it will play out in terms of a long-term save, but I do think it probably offers a lot more interesting possibilities, just the wildest things you could think of. So, for example, if we know that our roster is sitting here with the new generation WWF, so we're using the WWF NG, the new generation. We know we've got, Bret Hart. We know we've got Shawn on the roster. Well, it's like, what if we go out and get, I don't know, Andre the Giant or, Adam Cole or any of these guys like that are current, right? So like if we go out and get Roman Reigns and all this, like it's such a fascinating direction that like there are no limitations with what we could do booking wise. It would be just, I think, an experience just to kind of go through the game world and see where some of these people are at, and we kind of see, where everything stands and all that. So I just find it very interesting to sort of look at, would a War of the Immortals game, I don't know, probably the biggest issue with this is going to be like, who in the world do I pick to start with as the company? Because there are so many possibilities. But again, there are not any shortage of interesting options when you look at this. I mean, even Lucha Underground's in this. So it's like there are so many things that we could probably have some fun with on this. I think the hardest part will be picking which company do I start with if we did this direction. Or, again, like I said, if we want more of a true historical save, we could do the 1998 one, where I think it would be more fun to either do a WCW or an ECW in 98, or we can do the War of the Immortals here, where, again, it just, even with just the WWF companies, like, there's a lot of fun stuff that I feel like that could be done with this. But again, I also think it's like, all right, what if we took Impact, or what if we took TNA, and it's like, all right, well, let's go get the Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, or Mr. Perfect, or Ric Flair, and like, they're just in their prime, right? Like, not these people who necessarily went there, but like in their prime, what would it be like to have a Kurt Angle, Ric Flair match and all this other stuff? So I think that is very fascinating to me. So that's kind of where things stand on that. But I want your opinions on what we think, because I'm fine with either one. I think both are very interesting in their own right. As I said, I would love the thought of doing WCW or ECW 98. Not necessarily WWF, but I'm not against it completely if someone wants to make a case for WWF in 98. Or we just do one of these War of the Immortals companies and just run wild with this thing. I mean, just have all the crazy, wild possibilities with what could happen in this game world. And maybe that does make it a little bit more of a casual type game that you talk about fantasy booking, like all the fantasy booking you need in this particular mod when we got Bruno Sammartino going one-on-one with Big E or something. So, yeah, so there you go. Those are the options we've narrowed it down to for the next save on the channel. Again, I'm open if you have a stronger argument for something else, that's fine, but I think just from a mod scenario, I like 98, I like War of the Immortals, so I think one of those two probably more up my alley on this. I'm not going to click on the Kimberly Page Playboy narrative here because I don't know if that's going to get me banned from YouTube, but nonetheless, that is where things stand on where we're at. I'm picking the next game, and now I turn it over to you guys. Let me know what you think. What do we want to do here on the next save? And as I said, this will probably not be one that's as, extensive, as so in-depth, maybe. It'll just be kind of more of fun. Like, not to say the WWE one's not fun, it is. But this will be probably, one episode a week on this save, maybe two at the most if we just really get rolling on things. But that's kind of where we're at on that. But let me know what you think, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on which one of these appeal to you more. I think there's no shortage of options, and we will see how things go from there on that. So let me know, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments which one you're leaning towards, and we will go from there and figure out what we want to do with our next save here on the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. It's crazy that we've hit 200 subscribers. I just did this for fun. Like a long time ago, I was like, it's just going to be a fun thing we do. And but for how many of you are actually watching these on a regular basis and sending all the kind words, I can't thank you enough. So always fun to do this. Again, hit up the comments section. Let me know what you think. 98, War of the Immortals, what are we doing? Let me know, and we'll go from there. And on the next episode, we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming with SmackDown in Week 2 in September.